My name is Margot Chen, and I am 34 years old. I know this because my mother reminded me at dinner tonight. She said it like a diagnosis. She said it like she was reading the expiration date off a carton of milk she'd found in the back of the refrigerator and was deciding whether to throw it out. 34, she said, shaking her head, and still nothing to show for it. The restaurant smelled like prime rib and disappointment. That particular combination of seared fat and slow-roasted judgment that only a family New Year's Eve dinner can produce. The Westbrook Country Club had outdone itself this year. White tablecloths so crisp they could cut glass, centerpieces dripping with winter roses, and a string quartet playing something classical enough to make everyone feel cultured, but not so classical that anyone would actually have to listen. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I ignored it. I had been ignoring a lot of things lately. The way my sister Vivian's new diamond earrings caught the candlelight. The way my brother Derek's wife kept glancing at her Apple Watch like she was timing how long until she could leave. The way my mother's hand rested on the gift bag beside her chair. The one she'd been guarding all evening like it contained state secrets. The gift exchange, my father announced, tapping his butter knife against his champagne flute. It's tradition. Tradition. That word had been weaponized in this family for as long as I could remember. Tradition meant I drove 3 hours every holiday. Tradition meant I sat at the end of the table, closest to the kitchen door. Tradition meant I smiled when my mother introduced me to her friends as my other daughter, while Vivian got a full biography. The gifts came out in a parade of excess. For Vivian, a Cartier love bracelet, the real one. I watched my mother clasp it around my sister's wrist, and the gold caught the light like a small sun. For my beautiful girl, Mom said, you deserve beautiful things. For Derek, a Rolex, Submariner, the kind that costs more than most people's cars. My father handed it over with the gravity of a king passing down a crown. For my son, he said, a man should have a proper watch. For Derek's wife, Amanda, a weekend at a spa in Sedona. For giving us our grandson, my mother cooed, even though their son was 4 years old, and this gift felt less like gratitude and more like a reminder of what I had failed to provide. For Vivian's husband, Marcus, golf clubs. The kind that come with their own carrying case and a membership to a course I'd never be invited to. And then my mother's hand reached into the bag one final time. She pulled out a box. It was small, white, wrapped in silver ribbon that had been tied with the kind of precision that suggested professional involvement. She slid it across the table toward me, and I remember thinking that it felt light, too light, like holding a promise that had already been broken. For Margot, she said, no endearment, no, my beautiful girl, or for my daughter. Just my name, spoken like she was checking an item off a list. I pulled the ribbon, I lifted the lid, and I stared into nothing. The box was empty. Not empty like someone had forgotten to put something inside. Empty like a statement. Empty like a message written in the language of absence. There was a small card at the bottom, and I picked it up with fingers that had gone numb. Maybe next year, you'll earn something to put in here. The handwriting was my mother's. I recognized the loops, the sharp angles, the way she crossed her T's like she was slashing through something. The table had gone quiet. I looked up and I saw them all watching me. Vivian with her hand pressed to her new bracelet. Derek with his Rolex already on his wrist. My father with his champagne glass raised halfway to his lips, frozen in the act of celebration. And my mother smiling. Not a cruel smile. That would have been easier. This was the smile of someone who believed they were teaching a lesson. The smile of someone who thought they were being helpful. We discussed it as a family, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of manufactured concern. We think you need motivation, Margot. You're 34. You're not married. You don't have children. You're still working at that little nonprofit. It's not little, I heard myself say. We serve 6,000 families a year. And we just think, she continued, as if I hadn't spoken, that if we keep enabling you, you'll never push yourself to do better. Enabling me. The words landed like a slap. My phone buzzed again in my clutch. I felt it vibrate against my hip like a heartbeat, insistent and impossible to ignore. The thing is, Derek said, leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who had never been handed an empty box in his life, we all had to work for what we have. Nobody gave us anything. I looked at my brother, at his Rolex, at his tailored suit, at the ease with which he occupied space in the world, like the universe had been designed specifically to accommodate him. Nobody gave you anything, I repeated. That's right, Derek. I set the empty box down on the table. Who paid your law school tuition when you failed the bar the first time and Dad cut you off? The table went very still. Who covered your rent for 18 months while you found yourself in your 20s? Who paid off the credit card you maxed out on that trip to Vegas with your fraternity brothers? Who? That's ancient history, he said, but his voice had lost some of its smoothness. It's not ancient history to my savings account. Margot. My mother's voice had gone sharp. This is not the time. When is the time, Mara? I asked. When is it ever the time? Because I've been waiting for the right time for 15 years, and somehow it never comes. You're being dramatic, Vivian said, rolling her eyes. You always do this. You always make everything about you. I turned to look at my sister, at her perfect highlights and her perfect manicure and her perfect life that had been subsidized by my silence for longer than I could calculate. Vivian, I said, who paid your car insurance for 3 years after your DUI? Who covered the lawyer? Who made sure Mom and Dad never found out because you begged me not to tell them? Her face went pale. Who paid for your wedding flowers when you went over budget? Who covered the caterer's deposit when Marcus's check bounced? Who? Stop it, she hissed. Just stop it. I can't stop it, I said, because it never stopped. It just kept going, year after year, and I kept paying, and I kept quiet, and I kept telling myself that this was what family meant, that this was love, that if I just gave enough, eventually someone would see me. Eventually someone would say thank you. Eventually someone would hand me a box with something inside it. I picked up the empty box. I held it up to the light. But this is what I get, I said. This is what 15 years of being the family's safety net earns me. An empty box and a lecture about motivation. You're making a scene, my father said. His voice was low, controlled, the voice he used in boardrooms when he wanted to remind everyone who was in charge. Sit down and compose yourself. No. The word came out quiet, calm. It surprised me how calm it was. No, I said again. I don't think I will. I stood up. I picked up my clutch. I did not say goodbye. I walked out of the Westbrook Country Club on New Year's Eve, past the string quartet and the white tablecloths and the winter roses, and I did not look back. The drive home took 3 hours. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just drove through the darkness, watching the mile markers flash past like a countdown to something I couldn't name yet. My phone kept buzzing. I didn't look at it. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, it was almost midnight. I could hear fireworks in the distance, the muffled pop and crackle of other people's celebrations, other people's hope, other people's belief that the new year would be different from the old one. I climbed the stairs to my apartment. I unlocked the door. I set my clutch on the kitchen counter, and I finally looked at my phone. 7 missed calls from Mom, 3 missed calls from Vivian, 2 missed calls from Derek. I turned the phone face down and walked to my bedroom. I didn't undress. I didn't wash my face. I just lay down on top of the covers in my dress and my heels. And I stared at the ceiling, and I let the weight of the evening settle over me like a second skin. The empty box. I kept seeing it. The white cardboard, the silver ribbon, the nothing inside. My mother had wrapped nothing. She had tied a bow around absence. She had handed me a container of air and called it a gift. And the worst part, the part that made my chest feel like someone had reached inside and squeezed, was that I wasn't surprised. I had been receiving empty boxes my whole life. They just hadn't been literal until tonight. I must have fallen asleep at some point because when I opened my eyes, the room was filled with pale winter light and my phone was screaming. Not buzzing, screaming. The ringtone I'd assigned to my mother, a generic chime I'd chosen specifically because it was forgettable, was playing on repeat over and over, like a car alarm that wouldn't stop. I reached for the phone. 29 missed calls. I stared at the number. 29. I scrolled through the log. Mom, Dad, Vivian, Derek, Mom again, Dad again, Vivian, Derek, Amanda, Marcus, Mom, Mom, Mom. The calls had started around 2 a.m. and continued through the night, clustering together in waves of increasing desperation. The voicemails were piling up like snow, 17 of them, each, one probably more frantic than the last. I didn't listen to them. Instead, I opened my email, and that's when I saw it. The notification from my bank. The one that had buzzed in my clutch during dinner. The one I'd ignored because I was too busy being humiliated to pay attention. Alert. Automatic payment of $4,200 has failed due to insufficient funds in linked account. I sat up. I read it again. Automatic payment of $4,200. I didn't have an automatic payment of $4,200. I had never set up an automatic payment of $4,200. The most expensive automatic payment I had was my rent, and that was $1,850. I clicked through to my account, and the floor dropped out from under me. There are moments in life when everything you thought you knew rearranges itself into a new pattern. When the puzzle pieces you've been staring at for years suddenly shift, and you realize you've been looking at the picture upside down the whole time. This was one of those moments. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, my coffee going cold beside me, and I watched my financial history unspool like a horror movie I couldn't pause. The automatic payment that had failed was for a credit card I didn't recognize. A Visa with a limit that made my stomach turn. It was linked to my checking account, had been linked for almost 3 years, and it had been draining money from me in amounts just small enough to escape notice. A few hundred here, a few hundred there, never enough to trigger an alert, never enough to make me look twice, until now. Until the balance had grown so large that the minimum payment exceeded what was left in my account. I pulled up the card statement. The charges read like a biography of someone else's life. Spa treatments, designer handbags, restaurant meals at places I'd never been, a monthly subscription to a wine club, recurring payments to a country club, the Westbrook Country Club, the same country club where I'd been handed an empty box. 12 hours ago, I felt something cold move through me. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. Something that felt like the moment before a storm, when the air goes still and the birds stop singing and you know that something is coming but you don't know yet how bad it will be. I started digging. The next 6 hours disappeared into a fog of bank statements and credit reports and phone calls to institutions that kept putting me on hold while tinny music played, and my life fell apart in slow motion. Here is what I learned. There were 3 credit cards in my name that I had never applied for. 3. The oldest had been opened 7 years ago, right after I'd given my mother my social security number to help her update her records. The newest had been opened 18 months ago, around the time Vivian had asked to borrow my ID for a wine tasting because she'd left hers at home. The combined balance on these cards was $47,000, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the loan. A personal loan taken out 4 years ago using my identity and my credit score and my signature, forged so carefully that I almost believed I'd signed it myself. The loan had been for $85,000. It had been used to make a down payment on a house, Derek's house, the house where he lived with Amanda and their son, the house with the pool and the 3-car garage and the kitchen that had been featured in a local magazine, the house that I had visited for Thanksgiving last year, sitting at their table, eating their food, never knowing that my name was on the paperwork that had made it all possible. I pulled up my credit report, my score. The number I had spent years carefully building, paying every bill on time, never carrying a balance, doing everything right. had dropped by over 200 points. I was no longer a person who could be trusted with money. I was a risk, a liability, a cautionary tale. And I had done nothing wrong. I had done nothing except trust my family. The phone rang again. This time, I answered. Margot. My mother's voice was breathless, panicked, nothing like the composed woman who had handed me an empty box. Margot, thank God, we've been trying to reach you all night. I know, I said. 29 missed calls. There's been a problem, she said. A mistake. Something's happened with the accounts, and we need you to... Which accounts? I asked. My voice was calm. I was surprised by how calm it was. The credit card you opened in my name 7 years ago? The one you've been using to pay for your country club membership? Or the loan you took out to buy Derek's house? Silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know. Margot, she said finally, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. I understand that you've been using my identity to fund your lifestyle for almost a decade. I understand that you've destroyed my credit. I understand that while you were handing me an empty box and telling me I needed motivation, you were wearing jewelry paid for with money stolen from my future. It wasn't stealing, she said, and her voice had gone sharp again, defensive. It was family. We're family, Margot. Everything we have, we share. You don't share, I said. You take. There's a difference. You're being dramatic. You always do this. You always... I'm going to stop you right there, I said. Because I'm done listening to you tell me who I am. I'm done being the person you've decided I should be. And I'm done being your bank. Margot, wait. I hung up. The next 3 days were a blur of paperwork and phone calls and the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones and makes everything feel like it's happening underwater. I filed a police report. The officer who took my statement was a woman about my age with tired eyes and a wedding ring that she kept twisting around her finger. She didn't seem surprised by anything I told her. She'd heard this story before. Different names, different numbers, but the same betrayal. Family cases are the hardest, she said. People don't want to press charges against their own blood. I do, I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Okay, she said. Let's get started. I filed disputes with all 3 credit bureaus. I froze my credit. I changed every password, every PIN, every security question. I removed my mother as an authorized user on my real credit card, the one I'd added her to years ago for emergencies. I closed the joint savings account I'd opened with Derek when he was in law school, the one I'd forgotten about until I saw it on my credit report, still active, still linked to my name. I called a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, and she had an office in a building downtown that smelled like old books and new beginnings. She was in her 50s, with gray streaks in her hair and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck, and she listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. How much? She asked. Total. I handed her the folder I'd put together. The spreadsheets, the statements, the evidence of a decade of theft disguised as love. She flipped through it, her expression unreadable. $187,000, she said finally. Give or take. The number hung in the air between us. That's what they've taken from you, she continued. Credit card debt, the loan, interest, fees, damage to your credit score, which will affect your ability to rent apartments, buy a car, get a mortgage. The financial impact of this will follow you for years. I know, I said. What do you want to do about it? I thought about the empty box. I thought about my mother's smile. I thought about 15 years of being invisible, of being the one who paid and paid and paid while everyone else received. I want it back, I said. All of it. Patricia nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. The cease and desist letters went out on January 4th. One to my mother, one to my father, one to Derek, one to Vivian. The letters were precise, clinical, devastating. They outlined every fraudulent account, every forged signature, every dollar stolen. They demanded full repayment within 30 days. They warned of legal action, criminal charges, civil suits. They were not written in the language of family. They were written in the language of law. I know the exact moment my mother received hers because my phone exploded, 17 text messages in the span of 10 minutes. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I could imagine the progression, confusion, then denial, then anger, then threats, then pleading. The 5 stages of grief compressed into a single afternoon. Then came the voicemails. My father's voice, cold and controlled. Margot, this is unacceptable. You will call off your lawyer immediately or there will be consequences. Derek's voice, defensive and whining. This is insane. You're destroying the family over money. Is that really who you want to be? Vivian's voice, tearful and manipulative. I can't believe you're doing this to us. After everything we've been through together, I thought you loved us. And finally, my mother. You ungrateful child, she said, and her voice was shaking with rage. After everything we've done for you, after all the sacrifices we've made, this is how you repay us? By dragging our name through the mud? By treating your own family like criminals? I saved that voicemail. I saved all of them. Evidence. The first domino fell on January 15th. I got a call from Patricia. The credit card company is pursuing fraud charges, she said. They've reviewed the evidence, and they agree that the accounts were opened without your consent. They're going after your mother for the full balance. What does that mean? It means she's going to have to pay back $47,000, plus interest, plus fees. And if she can't pay, they'll sue. They'll garnish wages. They'll put liens on property. I thought about my mother's house, the one she'd lived in for 30 years. The one with the rose garden and the wraparound porch and the room that used to be mine before I moved out and never really came back. Okay, I said. Are you sure? Patricia asked. Once this starts, it's hard to stop. I'm sure. The second domino fell on January 22nd. Derek's loan went into default. The bank had discovered that the signature on the original paperwork was forged. They had compared it to my actual signature, the one on my driver's license, my passport, my real accounts, and the discrepancy was obvious. The loan was fraudulent. The money had to be repaid. But Derek didn't have $85,000. Derek had a house with a mortgage he could barely afford, a car payment that was 3 months behind, and a lifestyle that had been built on the assumption that someone else would always be there to catch him when he fell. That someone had been me, and I wasn't catching anyone anymore. The foreclosure notice arrived at Derek's house on February 1st. I know this because Amanda called me, sobbing, begging me to help. We're going to lose everything, she said. The house, the cars, everything. Please, Margot, please. Think about your nephew. Think about what this will do to him. I thought about my nephew, 4 years old, bright eyes and sticky fingers, and a laugh that sounded like bells. I thought about the room I'd helped decorate for him, the toys I'd bought, the college fund I'd started in his name. I thought about the fact that his parents had stolen my identity to give him a life they couldn't afford. I'm sorry, I said, but this isn't my responsibility. How can you say that? We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't take out loans in someone else's name and then hand them an empty box and tell them they need motivation. That was your mother's idea, Amanda said. I told her it was cruel. I told her, but you didn't stop her, I said. And you didn't tell me about the loan. You sat at your Thanksgiving table and watched me eat food in a house that was bought with my credit, and you said nothing. Silence. I'm sorry, I said again, but I can't help you. I hung up. February was the month everything collapsed. The credit card companies came for my mother. The bank came for Derek. The IRS came for everyone. It turned out that my family had been playing fast and loose with more than just my identity. There were unreported income streams. There were questionable deductions. There were years of creative accounting that had finally caught up with them. I hadn't reported them to the IRS. I hadn't needed to. Once the fraud investigation started, everything else came tumbling out. The house of cards they'd built, the perfect family, the successful children, the comfortable. Retirement was built on a foundation of lies and stolen money and the assumption that no one would ever look too closely. Someone was looking now. My father called me on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Margot," he said, and his voice was different, smaller. The boardroom authority was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do." "Please," he said, "just hear me out." I waited. "We made mistakes," he said. "I know that now. Your mother, she got carried away. She wanted to give your brother and sister the best, and she didn't think about the consequences. But we never meant to hurt you. You have to believe that." "Do I?" "You're our daughter," he said. "We love you." "You have a strange way of showing it." "Margot, do you know what it's like," I said, "to spend your whole life being invisible? To work and save and sacrifice, and watch everything you build get handed to someone else? To be told, over and over, that you're not enough, that you haven't earned anything, that you need motivation, while the people saying it are literally stealing your future?" "We didn't steal." "You did, Art," I said. "You stole my money. You stole my credit. You stole my trust. And then you wrapped up nothing in a pretty box and told me it was for my own good." "The box was your mother's idea," he said. "I told her it was too harsh." "But you didn't stop her," I said. "You never stop her. You just sit there and let it happen. And then you call me afterward and ask me to understand." "I'm asking you now," he said. "I'm asking you to forgive us, to drop the charges, to let us fix this as a family." "There is no family," I said. "There's just people who share DNA and people who share love. And you've made it very clear which category I fall into." "Margot, please." "Goodbye, Dad." I hung up. March came in like a lion and went out like a hurricane. My mother's house went on, the market, the rose garden, the wraparound porch, the room that used to be mine. All of it listed for sale to pay off debts that should never have existed. Derek and Amanda moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. The house with the pool and the 3-car garage and the magazine-worthy kitchen was gone, swallowed by the bank, returned to the void from which it had come. Vivian's husband filed for divorce. It turned out that the financial chaos had revealed other secrets, affairs, lies, a marriage that had been held together by money and nothing else. Without the money, there was nothing left. And through it all, my phone kept ringing. 29 missed calls became 50. 50 became 100. 100 became too many to count. I stopped answering. I stopped listening to voicemails. I stopped reading texts. I had said everything I needed to say. The rest was just noise. The final confrontation happened in April. Patricia had arranged a meeting. A mediation, she called it. A chance for everyone to sit down and discuss a resolution before the criminal charges went to trial. I didn't want to go, but I went anyway. The conference room was on the 12th floor of a building downtown. Glass walls, leather chairs, a view of the city that made everything below look small and insignificant. My family was already there when I arrived. My mother, my father, Derek, Vivian. They looked diminished somehow, smaller than I remembered. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by off-the-rack suits and dresses that didn't quite fit. The confidence was gone too, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Almost. "Margot," my mother said as I sat down. "Thank you for coming." I didn't respond. Patricia opened a folder. "Let's get started," she said. "We're here to discuss a potential settlement. My client is willing to consider dropping the criminal charges in exchange for full financial restitution and a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing." "We can't pay a full restitution," my father said. "We don't have the money." "Then I suggest you find it," Patricia said, "because the alternative is a trial. And based on the evidence we have, I'm confident that a jury will not look kindly on parents who stole nearly $200,000 from their own daughter." "We didn't steal," my mother said. "We borrowed. We always intended to pay it back." "With what?" I asked. It was the first time I'd spoken since entering the room. "You don't have jobs. You don't have savings. You don't have anything except a house that's about to be sold, and children who are just as broke as you are. We would have figured it out, she said. We always do. No, I said. I always do. I'm the one who figures it out. I'm the one who pays the bills and covers the shortfalls and makes sure everyone else gets to live their perfect lives while I scrape by on whatever's left. That's not fair, Derek said. We didn't ask you to do any of that. You didn't have to ask, I said. That's the point. I did it because I thought that's what family meant. I did it because I loved you. I did it because I believed that someday, somehow, you would see me. You would appreciate me. You would hand me a box with something inside it. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the folder, the one I'd been building for months, the one with every receipt, every statement, every piece of evidence of a lifetime of invisible labor. Do you want to know the real number? I asked. Not just the fraud, not just the stolen identity, the real number, everything I've given this family over the past 15 years. I opened the folder. I slid the spreadsheet across the table. $360,000, I said. That's what I've paid. Rent for Derek when he was in law school, car insurance for Vivian after her DUI, mortgage supplements for mom and dad when the market crashed, credit card interest, medical bills, emergency loans that were never repaid, gifts that were never acknowledged, a lifetime of being the invisible support beam that held this family up while everyone else got to be the roof. They stared at the spreadsheet. They stared at the numbers. They stared at the evidence of everything they had taken and everything they had never given back. I'm not asking for that money, I said. I know I'll never see it. But I want you to know. I want you to understand what you threw away when you handed me that empty box. Margot, my mother said, and her voice was small now, almost a whisper. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. I stood up. I'm done, I said. I'm done being your bank. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the daughter you forgot about until you needed something. What about the charges? My father asked. The settlement? I looked at Patricia. She nodded. The charges stand, I said. You can pay back what you stole, or you can go to trial. That's your choice. But either way, I'm finished. I walked to the door. Margot, wait, my mother called. Please, we're your family. Doesn't that mean anything? I stopped. I turned around. It used to, I said. It used to mean everything. But you taught me something, Mom. You taught me that family isn't a free pass to be cruel. Love without respect is just control in a nicer outfit. And I'm done wearing it. I walked out. I didn't look back. It's been 6 months now. I live in a different city, a smaller apartment, but it's mine. Really mine. No one else's name on the lease, no one else's debt attached to my future. I got a new job, a better job, the kind of job I never thought I could have because I was always too busy paying for everyone else's dreams to invest in my own. My credit score is recovering, slowly. It will take years to undo the damage, but I'm patient. I've learned how to be patient. I don't talk to my family anymore. Sometimes I think about them. About the house being sold, about Derek's apartment, about Vivian's divorce, about my mother alone in a smaller house, surrounded by the wreckage of the empire she built on my back. I don't feel guilty. I thought I would. I thought the guilt would eat me alive, that I would wake up every night wondering if I'd done the right thing, if I'd been too harsh, if I should have forgiven them. But the guilt never came. What came instead was peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally being seen. Not by them, they'll never see me, not really, but by myself. I see myself now. I see the woman who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. I see the woman who finally said enough. I see the woman who walked out of a country club on New Year's Eve with an empty box in her hand and a full heart in her chest. I keep the box, the empty one. I keep it on my bookshelf next to the plant I bought myself for my birthday and the photo of me at my new job and the acceptance letter for the graduate program I finally had time to apply for. I keep it as a reminder that sometimes the most valuable gift someone can give you is the truth about who they are. A reminder that empty boxes can be filled with whatever you choose. A reminder that the people who are supposed to love you don't always deserve to. And a reminder that walking away isn't giving up. It's finally choosing yourself. Last week, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I recognized. The loops, the sharp angles, the T's crossed like slashes. I almost threw it away, but I opened it instead. Inside was a check, 26,150. A fraction of what was owed, a drop in the ocean of what had been taken, and a note. I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. I know it will never be enough. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. No signature, but I knew who it was from. I looked at the check for a long time. Then I endorsed it. I deposited it into my savings account, and I didn't write back. Because some apologies come too late. Some damage can't be undone with money. Some relationships can't be rebuilt with a check and a note. But some wounds can heal, and some empty boxes can be filled. And some daughters can finally stop being invisible. My name is Margot Chen.